Hi everyone, I'm Samantha Luch. This is my research presentation for 699 at Morningside College entitled The Effect of Process-Oriented Guided Inquiry Learning on Native American Students' Chemistry Achievement. The problem that I saw and the reason that I did this research is that STEM careers continue to grow. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, all that employment is really growing with the technology especially, and people who want those jobs need college education. In order to be successful in that, you have to be engaged in your learning when you're in high school and even before then. Success on the ACT shows that engagement, and less than half of students in the country are meeting those requirements, and very, very few Native American students who took the ACT in 2016 have met those requirements for the science, technology, engineering, and math. And I teach on a Native American reservation, so that's where my focus is at. Even the Common Core, the new standards, have ways to implement student engagement, or they should be creating and designing more things, because we know that cognitive engagement results in students understanding and learning the material that is being taught. So it really hits home with me on the reservation. As a science teacher there, my students are not cognitively engaged, and I can see that every day in the classroom. That disengagement leads to behavioral issues, distractions for other students. Sometimes they have to be removed from the classroom, and ultimately we have some kids drop out as well, which is not what we want for them. That low engagement in the classroom can lead to issues after high school as well, outside of the education system. If they're not engaged in their job, then they can't keep a job, and then they can't pay bills, and those types of things lead to higher crime rates and higher incarceration rates, and all of those life issues lead to depression and other health problems that I certainly don't want to see my kids face. And that's just on average. If you look at the reservation, all of that is increased because they already start with those issues. There's already issues with teen pregnancy. They already have socioeconomic disadvantages. They're already at a higher risk of dropping out of high school. They're already at a higher risk of incarceration. So that disengagement in school just adds more and more to those issues. So the research that I did in looking for solutions to this problem, virtual instruction was the first one. So you can take your kids places that they wouldn't normally get to go, or you can have them watch videos outside of class, and then you get to use class time for those hands-on experiences, which are especially important in science. They get to collaborate, talk with each other. But in order for that to be successful, you have to have reliable technology. You have to have reliable internet. And the reservation that I teach on does not have those things, which we have found especially difficult in our current times. So the virtual instruction just wouldn't work for my students. And we also have teachers who aren't real confident in their abilities to work with that anyway. Student-directed learning. Students and the teachers really work together to design the assignments and the assessment, what kinds of questions are going to be on your test, or how hard did you work on this project? Did you give it your all? What kind of grade do you think you deserve? But the students tend to see those things as more meaningful because they were really a part of it. But you also first have to teach them the importance of all of that, like behind the scenes. So you're almost teaching them to be a teacher in order to be a more engaged student. And the research really doesn't show a whole lot of promise, so I didn't see it as worth it for my students. Whole group response is great for inclusive classrooms. Everybody gets to participate all together at the same time, showing their answers. Studies show that Native American students are 70% more likely than their white peers to be diagnosed with emotional disturbance, which also leads to lower confidence levels. So asking them even to hold up a flashcard in class with everybody else could be a huge issue with the confidence. So that wasn't something I was willing to try with my students either. Argumentation is really big right now with the new state standards as well. 15% of the standards in my state involve argumentation expected from the students. And it's actually even a hard thing to find in advanced courses, and I do not teach advanced courses. We don't have honor courses at my school. So if they're already hard to find in those classes, you can imagine what it's like in the basic classes. Again, it takes time to teach them that. It's very structured and they need that confidence to handle it. So what I found, which I felt like was all of the good things from those, is called Process-Oriented Guided Inquiry Learning, or POGIL for short. The research showed success in high school, it showed success in college, so we can be used at different ages and different levels. The research showed that attendance increased and test scores increased, which my school desperately needs both of those things. So that's why I chose it. It is supported by theory, discovery-based learning theory, inquiry-based, problem-based, incidental-based, whatever you call it, they're all really the same thing. The teacher presents the students with the problem and materials and says, okay, here's the issue, figure it out. So it means more to the students because they are engaged, they're involved in the material and the discovery of it, and it's not just sit and get. So the students come up with questions and the students design experiments, and it's all very hands-on and it can work with all ages. So POGIL is just a specific type of that I chose to work with. My big question for my research was, will POGIL improve Native American high school students' chemistry achievement? And my purpose of the single subject A/B study was to measure the effect of POGIL on Native American students' chemistry achievement. And I really focused on the Native American students because I found no research with any of this inquiry learning on Native American reservations. And that's who my kids are, and so that's what I needed to do to fill that gap. And I hypothesized that after participating in the POGIL activities in chemistry class, they would score higher on the chemical concepts inventory than prior to participating in the activities. I chose a single subject A/B research design because I only have one group of chemistry students. It's a small group. So they were their control and their treatment, and then we got to see how they grew on their own, if they really did learn something from that experience. So 16 students, most females. They were all Native American, and they all received free lunch at school. One student in the class has an IEP, which was if he desired the assessment to be read to him, he could go to the resource room for that. They were not offered anything extra, and nobody was eliminated from the study because it was all things we were doing for class. We used the textbook like you normally would, and we used this POGIL program, some select activities from it, and then the chemical concepts inventory as the assessment, which has a reliability just above the requirement and a validity between 0.2 and 0.75, which the minimum requirement is 0.3. So most of the questions met that requirement, but not all. So in a normal week, we would meet every day, Monday through Friday, for 50 minutes of class. We started with the pre-test of the chemical concepts inventory just to see where they were at. And then for the first 6 weeks, it was all textbook. I gave a little introduction. They read the section. They had a short assignment at the end. And then I would wrap up class and see if there were any questions that I needed to address. Chapter review and quiz to wrap up the chapter. And we did that for 2 chapters in 6 weeks. And then they took the inventory again to see if anything had changed during that time. and to get us ready for the treatment phase for the next 6 weeks, which was kind of a similar procedure. A little introduction from me, and then they were broken up into small groups of 4 to work on their POGIL activities, and then we'd take a break and get together and share anything that we learned from that, and then go back into the small groups and keep working, and then a wrap up at the end. And then after those 6 weeks, they took the assessment again. With that data, I ran 2 dependent samples t-tests to determine significance between the POGIL and their achievement in class with the content. And these are the results. So the pre-test and the post-test for the control show no statistically significant difference between those 2 things. And they actually went down a little bit in that in-between step. And then the treatment pre-test and the treatment post-test did have statistically significant differences, and it went up almost 2 points for that one. So POGIL was effective in increasing the students' chemistry achievement, and my hypothesis was supported. So POGIL takes all the good pieces from the research that I did, the collaboration, the engagement, and their sharing and argumentation, discussion, and it shows increased test scores. We had that with the CCI. It increased attendance for some of my students, and retention rates, I didn't have any students drop out of chemistry, which has happened in the past, so that was a good bonus to see. So problem solving and discovery increased student engagement, which I could see because after reading the textbook, nothing changed. It actually went down a little bit. And then after being involved in POGIL, their misconceptions that they had about chemistry were reduced by nearly a third. So great improvement there from being engaged and having those hands-on activities. So my recommendations for teachers is that you use more of these inquiry-based learning, because we know that the students learn and understand more when they are involved in this way. You have fewer distractions and issues, and your students are less likely to drop out of high school, according to research. Recommendations for students: take advantage of these things when they're offered to you, whether it's in class or summer camp or after school program. If you're engaged, you can achieve better, and you'll have more success and happiness in your future. Administrators, I ask for the funding for teachers to be able to do these things. The POGIL program itself is very inexpensive for the lessons, but the materials that go along with it is where we need that support, and also the professional development for how to do these types of things in our classrooms. But you will see higher ACT scores and higher attendance, which results in more funding in the end. There are some limitations. Differential selection of participants. So the kids who were enrolled in the class or the kids who were in the program, so they may have already had some different experiences in chemistry. Some of them had taken physical science the year before, so they had a little bit of background. So that may have been a disadvantage for the others. So my recommendation is that you would use a similar group of participants that have the same kind of background. Instrumentation validity of the CCI wasn't the perfect assessment, but it was the only one that I could find that could assess most of what we were doing. So my recommendation is that somebody develop an assessment specifically for POGIL, so that can be used to replicate this research. Experimenter effects, so that's on my side of things. My students tend to ask for a lot of help, and I tend to give them that assistance. So you need, my recommendation is to have participants who are not just automatically turn to the teacher for the answers, and teachers who aren't as willing to do that either. And then reactive arrangements, that's the student side of things. So good attendance, good attitude, willing to work these problems out on their own. Thank you for listening.